is posted there. All right, let's talk more about this now with TheRoot.com politics editor Jason Johnson, CNN political analyst John Avalon, and Julian Zelitzer, a professor of history and public affairs at Princeton University. Good to see all of you gentlemen. All right, Jason, you first, because earlier this month CNN reported that white supremacists were making robocalls supporting Trump in Iowa and New Hampshire, and now we're hearing that they might be expanding their calls to Vermont and Minnesota. Two Super Tuesday states. Do you think the Trump campaign would know about this, and in some way that kind of robocalling influencing how he handled this whole thing since Friday?
Donald Trump has had known white supremacists and Klan members at his rallies. They have beaten up protesters. They have advocated for his candidacy. He knows this. He knows this is a part of his support group. So I'm not surprised that he's denying it. I also don't think it ultimately is going to make much of a difference. The people who support Donald Trump, some support him because of his anti-establishment rhetoric. Some of them support him because of his populism. Some of them support him because he's an open bigot when it comes to lots of different kinds of people. So he's not going to reject a part of his constituency, especially when he's still riding high in the polls.
So, John, is that what this is about? Not alienating a certain segment of his constituency, but, you know, you do have the back and forth where he says, look, I'm on record Friday as saying I disavow it, and then, you know, I wasn't so certain about it. I mean, what is behind this language or this sequence that is kind of strange?
Well, let's stop trying to dignify his attempt to clean up a mess that he created. Of course he's going to try to say, look, you know, this turns out that, you know, refusing to condemn the KKK and David Duke didn't work out so well. Who would have thunk it? This is not a tough call. It is not a tough question. And his repeated refusal to condemn the KKK and David Duke is more than a dog whistle. It is a dangerous sign of who he really is, and it's a sign also that the people who are lining up behind him, that this is not a political decision as much as it's a moral decision about the direction of the Republican Party and the kind of person you want to associate yourselves with. And I think it's fascinating that for all those Trumpkin surrogates who love going on TV to defend their guy, they don't seem to be here right now, and I look forward to them trying to spin their way out of this one.
RNC Chief Strategist and Communications Director Sean Spicer is responding, tweeting this, quote, "Are you kidding? Of course the GOP has and does denounce these hate groups, people," end quote. So, Julian, but does this perhaps exemplify that, you know, Donald Trump answers to no one? He is speaking for himself. He doesn't necessarily concern himself with being in step with the GOP.
Look, Donald Trump has been sending mixed messages throughout the campaign, and I think he does it on purpose. That's a way to appeal to many constituencies at once. We're going into Super Tuesday. There are pockets of the electorate that are very hostile to issues involving race relations. And so when he says he doesn't know about white supremacy, he doesn't know about David Duke, he's sending a signal to them. And then he has the opposite message for everyone else who might be concerned. So,
but then isn't that where it's strange? Because with that acknowledgement, sorry to interrupt you, but isn't that strange? Because then he hears what, you know, so many representing the GOP said today and others outside of the party. And then he reminds people that he was on record as saying that he disavowed the Klan and David Duke as early as this past Friday.
That's the point. Both messages are out there. And so he can use both to appeal to different parts of the electorate.
Okay, let's talk about the Democrats now. This is getting all too confusing, isn't it, as it pertains to Donald Trump? Okay, so Bernie Sanders was clobbered by Hillary Clinton by nearly 50 points in South Carolina in that primary yesterday. He responded on ABC's This morning.
We got decimated, George. We got decimated. The only positive thing for us is we won the 29 years of age and younger vote, and that was good. But we got killed. But I'm in Minnesota.
All right, he says he got decimated, Jason. So how does a Bernie Sanders recover? What can he say? What can he do to convince Super Tuesday states to say, ignore just what happened in South Carolina. Think about what happened in New Hampshire for me.
You can't get people to ignore like a Rocky-level beatdown, Frederick. I mean, like, he got beat really bad in South Carolina. And I don't think he expected to lose by that large a margin. So the goal going into Super Tuesday...
Because he spent a lot of time in South Carolina.
A lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of endorsements, a lot of legitimate effort. And so I think on the one hand, we have to remember there's still a lot of race to go. Two, we have to, you know, apparently Hillary did a better job. But here's what Bernie has to remember. in Super Tuesday, he's got to keep the margins thin. He can't let Hillary Clinton run up the score. This race will get out of hand.
Okay, so let's take a pause for a moment, and let's go to Bernie Sanders, who is talking right now. Let's see if he said anything more about his strategy leading up to Super Tuesday.
Behind, and a few now have us in the lead. As all of you know, on Tuesday, Super Tuesday, over 800 delegates in 11 states are going to be selected. 77 of those, well, many of those delegates will be selected right here in Oklahoma. And I hope very much you will be participating here in Oklahoma on Super Tuesday. Football, and I know you guys are enthusiastic about football, I know that. Football is a spectator sport unless you're out on the field. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And when we talk about making a political revolution, what it means is that we're going to change the political culture of America. And what that means, and this is not easy stuff, this is pretty revolutionary stuff, is the millions of people, including many in Oklahoma, many in my own state of Vermont, who have given up on the political process. These are people who say, why should I vote? You know, I look at what goes on in Washington. These guys could care less about me. We talk about young people never having participated in the political process. What our job is to revitalize American democracy, to have one of the highest voter turnouts on earth rather than one of the lowest.
To Bernie Sanders there, saying that he is moving into Super Tuesday with momentum, despite the fact that he lost. He was smashed by Hillary Clinton, his competitor in South Carolina. And you heard Hillary Clinton in her concession speech last night saying, kind of in response to Donald Trump, as we've been talking about this whole back and forth involving the KKK, saying, you know, America is great. What she wants to do is make America whole. Governor John Kasich almost repeating a very similar refrain, now talking to supporters in Massachusetts, saying there is no time for hate. Let's listen in.
Well, I guess every day I wake up, there's another crazy thing happening in this campaign. And apparently today, I don't understand it, but Donald Trump refused to disassociate himself and condemn white supremacists. Every day it's another thing. Yesterday, I listened to and that's just horrific, right? We don't have any place for white supremacists in the United States of America, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. And he really needs to make his position clear, and he ought to do it quickly. Yesterday, they were hurling so much insults back and forth. You know, some people say, well, you know, you are a measured man, you're a positive guy, and really you need to mix it up more. And some people say, you know, really give it to him and all that. And I was thinking about it on the airplane over here. See, you know, when you've been in government and you've made things work, and let me just tell you that I have never been a go-along or get-along guy. I stepped on a lot of toes, and I never like to think that I made enemies, but a bunch of them are coming out now and criticizing me. Let me just explain to you that, like many of you, I grew up in a family where we didn't really have any power. My father was a mailman, carried mail on his back and delivered mail to our house. When I was a kid, I wanted to be, more than anything else, I wanted to make the Little League team. And this was my big dream when I was a little kid. And we'd run out in the field and have a number attached to our back, and we'd get up to the plate and we'd swing as hard as we could. And then we'd
John
wait for the
Kasich there, really talking about the harmony that he wants to help promote
And I
this,
never got a phone
particularly
call. Never.
on the heels of this
And,
dust-up involving Donald Trump and his comments about the Klan, whether he disavowed it, and then he seemed to kind of be a little wishy-washy on it, and then once again today disavow. So back with my panel now, Jason Johnson, John Avalon, and Julian Zelizer. So I wonder, Julian, if I can ask you, do you believe, especially after hearing these comments now from Bernie Sanders, John Kasich, you heard from the GOP, representatives of the party, might this be a turning point as a result of what has transpired since Friday as it pertains to Donald Trump and how he's handled this whole discussion and Q&A about the KKK?
You know, we've heard that so many times before, including with his remarks about Muslims, that it's hard to reach that conclusion. And one of the things he has done is push the boundaries of what's permissible, and it has not blown back against him. So I think at this point, it would be premature to say this is a turning point that will work against him.
And John, how do you see it?
Look, I wish I could say that this would be a sea change, that it's a dose of cold water on the people who've been flirting with Donald Trump. But as Julian was saying, this campaign has been dominated by Donald Trump, pandering to the outer reaches of politics, playing the hate, fear, and division card, and masking it as entertainment. And it hasn't hurt him one bit, whether he's dissing John McCain or refusing to condemn the KKK. So we'll see if his margins tighten. We'll see if this is the sea change. But that becomes a character reference and a gut check for the Republican Party. And if it doesn't, then I think that becomes a whole nother conversation that the Republican Party and the country need to have. Because if this isn't an easy call, folks, then you got to look inside your own heart, and we got to look at our own system. And the lack of representative turnout in these primaries pollutes the process.
And so, Jason, you see, in the New York Times today, the GOP, there is this concerted effort to stop Donald Trump, according to their reporting. So a moment like this, how does this potentially backfire for the GOP if there is indeed this concerted effort in a land of democracy to say you're not the guy that we want, you're not the one to represent the party, we don't want you to win
Well, first
the
off,
nomination?
Frederica, they can't be disingenuous. Steve Scalise was speaking to the Klan. We were just talking about that a couple months ago. So it's not like the Republican Party hasn't played footsie under the table with white supremacist groups, and I will use their similar rhetoric. I don't want to hear white supremacists. Call them terrorists. Because the KKK is a terrorist organization, and that's how it should be described. But ultimately, we got to remember this. It's like if you're a boxer, right? You don't want to win on points. You want to knock somebody out. If the Republican Party tries to cheat Donald Trump out of this nomination by changing the rules or changing the scheduling, it will blow up in their faces. They need to let this process go out. And if he loses, great. And if he wins, he's got the nomination, and you got a race on your hands.
Wow. All right. Jason Johnson, John Avalon, Julian Zelizer, thank you so much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.